Right now on Tech Radio, has social just died?
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
You're welcome to episode 1104, looking at Ireland's social and roping in the rest of Europe. It's looking like even Mark Zuckerberg from Meta is cagey on the future of social. Plus, our expert guest this week is Dr Ryne Sherman, who's connecting from the States to chat about remote working in 2026.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. Niall, everybody wants to get rid of social media, and Mark Zuckerberg is in court kind of going, and making all kinds of excuses. Let's deal with Ireland first. What's the story?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of following on from Portugal's announcement earlier this week that a bill was working its way through Parliament there, looking to ban social media for under 16s. As we know, in France, they're trying to get a ban through for under 15s in time for the new school year on the 1st of September. And in England, they're looking to do the same. Greece and Slovenia, I think, have already done the same. Slovenia or Slovakia, I can't remember off the top of my head. But now Ireland is joining the effort. They're looking. The plan is to introduce a digital age of majority of around 16. So that's not. That's kind of in line with what the rest of Europe is looking to do. It's in line with what they've done in Australia. Next week, we've got a great conversation with Rena Maycock from Chirp, who has plenty of opinions on what's happening there in Australia. But this seems to be, we're following, I don't want to say the plan, but we're following our European neighbours in this. Of course, the argument will be that kids will find a way around technical solutions for these things. This is true. But, if we can afford parents as much control as possible, and maybe if there's a bit of positive peer pressure involved where kids get used to actually meeting up in the street and playing as they used to in times past. Actually, a side note, I was working with a fella from a younger generation than me a while back, and he asked me in all seriousness, did you just go out to play when you were like young? The idea of, being left to run around unsupervised.
Really? He wanted to know, just on the road, just hanging out with your mates and playing whatever it was, football or something on the road. He wanted to know if you did that. Because kids, I was reading this, kids, and this is what is happening is kids and society in general, okay, are guilty of staying in and doom scrolling or watching video shorts.
Doom scrolling or helicopter parenting, which I gather is a thing. There you go. There's plenty of reasons why people stay in with screens these days.
Define helicopter parenting.
It's constant supervision. Make sure that everything you do, either mommy or daddy are nearby as your fallback in case something goes wrong.
Okay. It's a long time since, okay, grand. Fair enough.
You were left out in the streets to beg, Dusty.
Do you know my favourite thing is, I always say, is that we didn't have helmets when we were kids. that's the one that I always kind of tread out. Do you know the one that what makes me kind of smile about this whole keeping kids off social media is that it reminds me of the smoking ban. That started off, I think it was in the States, and then Ireland was one of the leaders banning smoking indoors and stuff like that. And it was just a thing that just took off around the world. And now I can't really think of anywhere in the Western world, I should say, that I would be visiting where you can smoke. I'm sure in other less developed countries, you can still smoke wherever the hell you want. But it's nuts to think, kind of, when you think about the difference in generations there. Did you play out on the road when you were a kid? And now social media is seen as evil as alcohol and smoking.
Yeah, well, and sitting as well. Sitting is the new smoking, as we all know. But trying to do less of that. Just get out and about.
Oh, thank God I'm at that age now where I can just sit back and go, I don't care. Anyway, speaking of social media and it kind of being rolled back, is there anything else on the government's digital and AI strategy that's kind of coming across your desk that you're noticing?
Well, I mean, the main thing is that we're going to be seeing the establishment of an independent AI office. That's a good organizational development. I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. As we know, the EU AI Act takes what they call a risk-based approach to AI, which sounds, pretty flexible. So to decide what constitutes risk or risky comes down to a case-by-case basis. So it's not something you can leave at the door of an overworked state agency. So to have a separate office for it, yeah, I'm all in favour of that. So there you go. That's what's happening locally at the moment. But sure, the real action is happening in Los Angeles right now.
Oh, yes. It reminds me of Judas. And Jesus said, "You will deny me." Mr. Zuckerberg is doing exactly the same thing in court. He's denying things left, right and centre. Tell me all.
Oh, well, I mean, this is a very tragic case, though. This is super serious stuff. This is what they're calling a bellwether case. And the legal argument going on here is really interesting. This was a case taken by a woman who was known as KGM in the court. And she took Snap, TikTok and Meta to court on the argument that their platforms are designed to be addictive. They exacerbated various mental health problems that she had already. Snap and TikTok settled out of court. Meta said they'd fight it. And this week, Mark Zuckerberg went to court. And it was a strange experience because we know Mr. Zuckerberg does not do well in front of an audience, does not do well in front of people that, aren't sycophants, and got off to a bad start in court because he showed up and he had an entourage who were wearing the Facebook glasses, the Ray-Bans, with the camera built in. And the judge said, okay, if any of you are recording, you're in contempt. Straight away, he was not having any of it. It was a bad look for Meta. And when Zuckerberg was being asked, was he carrying any weapons on his way into the court, as security are wont to do, he said, "Well, I'm wearing a gold chain." There you go, Mark Zuckerberg, man of the people. Come on, dress for the occasion, man. You don't need to be wearing drip, for God's sake. Just go and be serious and demonstrate that you are serious about what's going to happen. Because the questioning was actually quite in depth. And what I really like about this case is that it circumvents the Section 230 defense that social networks and platforms have benefited from since the 1990s, since before they were, they're benefiting from protections that were a thing before they were a thing, which has always said just because somebody says it on your platform doesn't mean you're liable for it. So the current argument is that, well, okay, we're not talking about what's said on the platform. We're talking about the way you constructed your platform, right? And we know you built your platform with the following use cases in mind, with the following behavior patterns in mind. That's what you wanted, and you got what you wanted, and it's hurting people. And in this woman's case, it led to very, very severe problems. So this is the interesting thing about the case. It circumvents the platform v content argument and goes to the nature of the platform. And I think Meta, which of course, is Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, they are in trouble on this because we've seen internal documents from Instagram where they've admitted that, people seeing sort of the content on our site are being negatively affected. Will that extend to, okay, infinite scroll is hurting people an awful lot? Is that something the judge is going to agree with? So I thought it was fascinating encounter. I think it shows that, 2 years ago we had Zuckerberg going up in front of Congress, performed very poorly. On Wednesday, he went in front of a judge, admitted that he is not a good performer in all things, media or, being interrogated by people he doesn't know. So at least there was some element of, understand what's going on. And he, I don't even want to say it in his defense, but he did come out and say, look, bad things do happen to happen to people on our platform. And, I'm very sorry that, we're not catching these things fast enough on the rare occasions that they do happen. But he was asked one or two questions, and it was almost like he was seeing things through the lens of how things are meant to work instead of how people actually use them. I think there was one question about how to set up an Instagram account, and he was basically like, but who would do that? It's like, well, clearly the person who's brought this case did that. This is part of your problem.
Yeah. And I think that is very much the way in that, kind of they roll fast and play hard or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, they just put things out there. And I think if you look back at the history of Facebook, it was kind of like, well, I don't really care. I just want to get it out there so people can do this, this and this. And you don't think about the consequences. And that also is human nature. So I suppose there's two sides to every story. My favourite quote of the proceedings during the week was where the judge asked Mark Zuckerberg, do you really believe a 9-year-old reads the terms and conditions before they click accept? It's kind of like, well,
there you go.
Yeah,
that's the crux of the case, really.
Well,
isn't it?
That is it. And then the other thing is that if Facebook lose this, or if Meta lose this, then it just opens the door. Then because a precedent has been set, and it's finding Meta and Instagram and Facebook responsible for all kinds of bad things that happen to people. Am I right?
Yeah. I know it's almost a biblical concern, really. It's how do you treat the least of you? I think that was a line from, it was either Plato or Socrates. It's like, if you want me to know what kind of society you're in, show me your prisoners.
Can I just check that a tech show from 2026 is quoting Plato and Socrates? Is that what you're doing to us?
No, I can't remember exactly who said that, but that was the line.
Other news this week, good Irish news actually, down in Edenderry in County Offaly. This is a very interesting project. They have just launched Ireland's first grid-scale battery storage system. Okay, now everybody seems to be getting solar panels in on their house, and it's connected to a battery system so that during the day you can run whatever off solar power, and at night time when there's no sun, the battery is able to distribute the power and stuff like that. All right, that's fine on a small scale. And I saw there is a company, I can't remember where they are, but what they do is they recycle batteries from cars, okay, because they're huge batteries. After about 10 years, they don't have enough oomph in them to power the car, but there's still enough oomph in them to power dozens of bulbs in your home. So they recycle it on that way, which is quite interesting. However,
is that the official measurement? We got 12 oomph left in this battery.
It's my new measurement. But this is a grid scale battery storage system. One of the big problems with generating wind power or solar power in Ireland is that we have the power when the wind is there, we have the power when the sun is there, but when you put it into batteries, it runs out like really quickly. All right. So they haven't been building kind of, very large scale kind of battery operations as a result of that. This is the first one to do that. It can supply up to 10,000 homes for 4 hours. So it's big. Wow. And it can click in less than 1/10 of a second. So it's like, boom, immediate. So it's interesting to see that is going on. It's great to see kind of a large scale thing like that, because I think we have enough electricity. There's enough wind, as we well know with the weather. There's enough wind in this country to power like 30 or 40% of our electricity needs as a nation. All right. But it's the problem is that we just can't store it for days where it's not windy.
True. Yeah. And a problem that's been with us for so long. They've been working on it in the Amber Research Centre in Trinity for quite a while, using, I think, graphene as a storage medium. But anyway.
However, you're a Google Pixel man. You love your Google Pixel phone, am I right?
I have a Pixel 9 Pro XL Max Giant whatever the hell they call it. And we've come to an accommodation. There's things that I don't like on it. There's things that I just have never left my iPhone behind for. I find the notifications just really annoying. They're too discreet for me. I really need a giant number in front of my face to sort of accept, to recognize that something has come. A tasteful dot does not work on me, not in the least. So I get angry people calling me back or going, where are you? I'm like, I didn't know you called. I didn't know you rang. What? I had it on silent. I can't tell what's going on with these tiny dots. It's nonsense. It doesn't work for me. But, as I said, I've come to an accommodation with it.
Okay. So overall, kind of happy. 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay, grand, lovely. So the only reason I asked is because Google, their mid-price phone is the Pixel 9a. They've just released the 10a this week. Not a lot to report on this, actually. It's funny because I'll bring you up to speed on Apple in a second. It's something similar. The Pixel 10a, slightly better display. The extreme battery saver will last just a little bit longer. The wireless charging is a wee bit faster. They've introduced satellite SOS. I don't know if that's going to work in Ireland. The phone definitely gets Android 16, which I suppose is good. And the main thing is that they're still keeping it at a reasonable price. The US price is $499. I was having a look at it on Vodafone. The 9A at the moment is $399. Now, whether you need to be signed up with Vodafone for that, I don't know. But that's certainly the prepay price, $399, which is all right.
So we'll probably get dollar to euro then on the price again.
I think we might, or maybe even better, we'll see. But anyway, my point on the story is that Google have come out with this year's phone and it's like, and then Apple have got an event coming up in 2 weeks' time. And normally with Apple, it's like, oh, they're going to announce this or whatever. There's always these well-placed kind of little leaks. This year, the most that we're getting is new colors. Duh.
Really?
Yeah, they're saying that the MacBook is going to come with the Pro and the Pro Max M5 processors, which they should have done last year. So that's no real surprise. And the only thing we're watching out for, really, and this is where I think is a bit strange, they're bringing out a cheap. We're talking about Apple, a budget MacBook Air.
Okay,
all right, which they're hoping will go for in and around £800. Which I think could do very well for them. But it's kind of like, do you associate Apple with cheap or budget? Do you know what I mean? They're going to cut back. The screen's not going to be as good. The RAM's going to be way down.
The interesting thing is when they have tried it and the iPhone 5A sticks out as the example of this, because it was the only time they've really tried to do something budget. It ended up being really popular. But... yeah. Apple themselves went, it's not really us. It's not really us. We'll go back to what we were doing. We'll just drop it. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with a budget MacBook. Will they come out and go, oh, actually, this has opened up a new market for us. This is really good. Or will they be like, do you know what? Just not that into it. We're premium people. That's it.
There's been a lot of selling off of older versions of MacBook Airs. I know I've mentioned it many times before. I got a MacBook Air M2 this year for like £800. That's great. Just for knocking around and going down to the coffee shop and whatever. It's fine. It's perfect. And then when I was away in Australia, I was really annoyed because for the same price, €800 after the conversion, it was a MacBook Air with an M4 processor. So it's like, oh wow! I think the price of these things just coming down. So just watch the price and watch what's going on. You have an interesting story this week about headphones. They're bad for your health, and it's not just listening to your favorite music at high volume.
This was a report in The Guardian, and it caught my attention because it was like, what else can go wrong, because I wear headphones for, I would say, half the day. You wear headphones for half the day because it's your job. And now it turns out that wearing headphones for extended periods is not good for you, that there's loads of hazardous chemicals actually, in headphones. That's just part of their makeup. And they're actually pretty toxic, but toxic in a, very long tail kind of way. So these are substances that have been linked to, cancer, neurodevelopmental problems. And my favorite one, just to know you're reading The Guardian, it's been linked to the feminization of males.
Oh, sweet God of Almighty.
I think Taylor Swift has more to do with that than chemicals on headphones, to be honest.
Headphones are bad for you. Shocker. Here's a shocker. There was another report out this week was saying don't use AI for creating your passwords. It's a cybersecurity firm called Irregular. Just tried this out. And they said that AI, because it's just a language model and it's following a formula, it essentially is going to just follow a formula for creating passwords. And there won't be anything random about it at all, even if it looks like random. And they did a little survey. They went into ChatGPT, they went into Claude, they went into Gemini, and they said all of them produced highly predictable passwords. And of the 50 passwords that they generated as part of this little thing, they said Claude AI produced the same password 10 times.
Wow.
So much for AI and the intelligence part of that. Listen, last story. And why am I keeping money till the last? Huh?
You like money.
I do. Who doesn't? IT salaries are not keeping up with inflation. Tell me about this.
Yeah, interesting report. 2 reports on salaries came out this week, but I'll mention the one by Morgan McKinley. It was their 2026 annual salary report. And apparently salaries in IT went up about 2%. Overall, this is not good news. This is not good. Despite the fact that, the breadth of roles is increasing, especially with new positions like AI ethicists, really ramping up. Just the money doesn't seem to be there to pay for them. So one thing the report has said is that employers are getting quite interested, more interested in upskilling people, or as part of your career path saying, hey, stick with it long term. You will also get to have experience of X, Y, Z, as well as what we're hiring you for at the moment. And also, hey, we've got quality of life stuff that we can help you out with as well, which I think is the real battleground. I've read this in a few reports that companies, especially Irish companies, they know they can't compete with the multinationals on money, but they can compete on lifestyle and quality of life. I know as a business owner yourself, Dusty, would you consider that to be a reasonable approximation?
Do you know what? That's always part of it. It's not just only about the money. It's about everything else that you're doing. It's the challenge. It's the growth. It's the people you're working with. It's the location. It's the money. It's everything. It's everything. Yeah. Said a man who's been writing a job advert all morning, as it turns out. But anyways, so yeah, it's not just about money, but I mean, money is one of the key parts of it. However, listen, there we go. That is all the tech news that is news this week. And Niall Kitson, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006. This is Tech Radio.
We've gone through some massive changes in working patterns in the post-COVID era, from hybrid working becoming a deal breaker in finding a job, the Great Resignation, and how side hustles got so popular with Gen Z, and now the acceptance that maybe things weren't so bad working in 9 to 5 in an office after all. Dr Ryne Sherman is Chief Science Officer at Hogan Assessments, and he had a chat with Niall Kitson during the week about the psychology of leadership, what the latest trend of quiet cracking means, and more.
Ryan, thanks for joining us. There's 2 things I kind of want to frame our conversation around, and that is 2 real shifts that we've experienced in the 20s, as we know them, and which haven't been roaring. They've been doing other things. First of all, COVID very much changed people's expectations of what a career is and the things that come with the job, in particular, looking at remote working, looking at taking much more control of their work-life balance, which has created a lot of tension between, employees and their employers, particularly in the corporate world where things are done at scale. And we've also had this culture shift with Gen Z, which has been much more pronounced than I think a lot of people would have thought. The shift from Gen X to millennials seemed to have been fairly organic. The shift, however, from millennials to Gen Z seems quite different. Also, a large part of that is about the perception of where a job or a career sits in your life. The idea of a job for life really seems to have gone out the window with Gen Z, who seem much happier with constructing their own career, either through having a main job and a side hustle, or, looking to go for a startup instead of forming a band, as was tradition. Are these things you're seeing out in, the real world?
Yeah, well, certainly. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the radio here today. I'm happy to chat with you about these topics. Second, this is one of the things that we are certainly seeing is this tendency for people to move around in jobs and their careers. I think a big part of that, it's really tempting to go, oh, this is some generational thing. I'm not so sure that it's a generational thing, more of just a shift in culture more broadly, in part because of the way technology has changed, right? So, and part of this was out of necessity. You mentioned COVID. Part of this was a necessity of COVID. Organizations had to pivot very quickly. I know some organizations that were saying, can we do things online? Can we run a training session online? I don't know. Maybe we should just keep doing it in person. And then COVID hit and everybody was forced to go online. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, we can do this. We can make this work in an online environment. So I think that's a big part of why people are more comfortable shifting jobs, because there's more availability for those jobs. There's more supply of those jobs that you can shift to. I think one of the reasons historically many people, and I'll just for context on this, my mother worked in the same job from the time she was 18 until the time she retired in her early 60s. So what has happened? Why is it that people don't do that anymore? I think it's partly because of the fact that there's more options. I don't think it's a change in the psychology of the individuals. I think it's because there are now more opportunities and more options available due to changes in technology. I remember some years ago, I was talking with a colleague about the autonomous vehicle, which is still it's never really progressed as fast as we thought it was going to progress, but it's still sort of making its way this direction. And what that would mean for where people live. And we talked about the fact that people would live much farther from cities. They'd live much farther from work because the commute wouldn't seem so burdensome if I don't have to drive. If I can just sit in my car and text, or if I can sit in my car and work on my laptop, the commute isn't such a big issue. And I think we're seeing that partly with the rise of Zoom and Teams and these other kinds of technologies that make working at a distance more doable than ever. I think that's the big reason why we're seeing people say, hey, I'm going to shift careers. I'm going to move into a different career. I'm willing to take more risk because there's more opportunity for those kinds of shifts than there was in the past.
That's really interesting point you raised there about risk and how people have, abandoned that job for life perspective. Is this something that you're seeing particularly just in the young portion of the workforce, or are people who have been with a company, who have been upskilling, who have looked around and gone, do you know what? I'm getting good at AI, but here's a competitor over here that is actually going to reward me much better. And how do employers respond to that? Do they look at, okay, what's the point in upskilling somebody in an emerging technology if they're just going to leave?
Right. Yeah. Well, of course, the classic line of that is, what happens if we don't develop our people and they stay, right? That's the sort of the classic response to that. But I do think there is a bit of an age portion to this, but I don't think it's different from what we've seen in the past. In particular, we know when we're younger in our lives, all of us are more prone towards taking risk. We feel, well, partly because we have less. If you don't have much, there's not a lot of risk, not a lot of risk of losing a whole lot. And partly because of our biological makeup. So we have different hormones and different biochemistries when we're younger as well. As we get older, our biochemistries change, and we become less prone to take certain kinds of risks. I remember a great interview with Jensen Huang, who's of course, the founder of NVIDIA. And he said, I would never start NVIDIA today. And I think, of course you wouldn't. You're a lot older. You have a hugely successful company. It's a huge risk for you to go try to start a company today. But it wasn't a huge risk for you, when you were younger, when you had less, that you just have less to lose. And so I think that pattern has continued for a long time. And I think that's really what we're seeing. So I do think it is true that young people are more comfortable with risks. And part of that includes switching jobs. But I think it's mostly driven by change in technology, not sort of this change in attitude or sort of a change in the relationship necessarily between employer and employee. Although I will give one caveat on that, which is that in the remote environment, it does seem that people feel less connected to their employer and that they do feel more like this is a transactional relationship. And when you're in a transactional relationship, you're much more likely to say, well, it's just a transaction. I'll move to somebody else.
We've had a fascinating trend over the last few years of quiet quitting, which I think feeds very well into your point that you're making there, that people, in the olden days, we would have called it work to rule, something that unions very much found an effective tool. Now people are just not indulging, but they're engaging in that transactional approach to their employer, where they're looking at the level of maybe their salary or the level at which they feel supported and going, well, I consider my worth to be this, and that's where I'm going to stop. If my employer isn't going to support me in, upskilling or in recognizing other value that I can present to the company, well, then I'm just going to identify the point at which the value of my labor finishes. And maybe, look for a side hustle or a startup. Now we're approaching the sort of the back end of the 20s, and we are seeing sort of trends that we would have called, quiet quitting, which kind of fed into that. But now we're seeing something called quiet cracking. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. The first thing is that people are only going to belong to a relationship so long as they feel like it offers them a good deal. That's true in a business relationship. That's true in a romantic relationship. That's true in an employee-employer relationship as well. So if you feel like it offers you a good deal, then you're more likely to stay in the relationship. I remember some years ago, early in my career, I got advice from actually Robert Hogan. I was working in an academic career, and I was working really hard, putting in 60 hours a week. And I just thought, someday somebody will recognize, that I'm working really hard, and that there will be some recognition of this. There will be some promotion. There'll be some reward for this work. And I started to realize it just wasn't going to happen. And I was talking with Dr. Hogan about this, and he said to me, you're worth more, but the job isn't. And I think that's a really important point. I think when we're talking about things like quiet quitting, I think part of that is a realization that the only way to make the relationship a fair deal, or the only way to make these things sort of feel balanced, is to say, I'm not going to put in that extra amount of work. I'm not going to put in work above and beyond what's called for in my job description. And I think that's part of the realization that people are having when you see things like quiet quitting. Quiet cracking is interesting. Both of these are really just forms of disengagements. We've been talking about disengagement in the IO psychology world for a really, really long time. But quiet cracking is more like, it's closer to burnout is one way I would describe it. It's more that you are slowly getting worn down by your job to the point where you just, but you're not saying anything. You're not saying, hey, this job's wearing me out. Hey, this is too much. You're trying to do your best to continue to keep it all internally. Until eventually at some point things just break and you crack, and that can lead to unhealthy stress, which can lead to medical conditions, which cause you to miss work for a while. But it can also just lead to completely sort of blowing up in the workplace and just completely leaving the workplace altogether. And so that is a new trend we're seeing as well. But I think at the core of all of this is disengagement from employees.
That presents a really interesting problem for team leaders who now are dealing with teams that just aren't invested in the company culture, or maybe, even in the project as much as they would have been in years gone. How are leaders engaging, for want of a better term, with this problem?
Well, I think the real issue is that they're not. I think for a couple of reasons. So number one is I don't think we do a great job of training our leaders how to lead other people. I think many people get put into leadership positions because they were very good at their current role. And so you get put in a leadership position and we just sort of hope you figure it out from there. We don't know how to train you to have these kind of conversations with your employees. But at the same time, we're also seeing an increase in the sort of player coach model, which is making it even more difficult for these leaders to do that kind of leading. By that, what I mean by that is that we are sort of forced to do the regular job, but also lead the same team at the same time. And that puts a lot of strain on the leader in terms of how to prioritize their activities. They have certain set of tasks that they have to get done just like everybody else. But now they're also asked to provide strategic direction for the team, to provide coaching and development for the individual members of the team. And I think in a lot of cases, what we see is those leaders are just overwhelmed with the role. And we're seeing more and more organizations go to this in part because that's a great way to reduce cost, right? Instead of having managers who only manage people, no, let's have player managers who do some work, but then also manage people at the same time. It's a great way to manage, a great way to reduce those short-term personnel costs. But I think it's at this long-term sort of psychological health risk for for both the managers and the employees.
Yeah, it seems to present a unique problem where companies want to keep people as customer focused as possible, so customer facing as possible, while also pushing these additional duties on top of them. Does that make leadership roles less attractive?
Oh, in fact, that's exactly what we're seeing, right? Is that more and more people are telling us, no, I'm not interested in a leadership position. I mean, it used to be, years ago, if you said, hey, we think you're really good, we want to consider you for a manager role. I mean, this was one of the best pieces of news you could get in the workplace. More and more now, we are seeing people who say, thanks for that. That's really great. I'm not interested in a manager role because, again, part of it is about what they see with other managers. They go, well, that's a lot more work and a lot more responsibility and a lot more pressure and a lot more potential stress. I kind of like, that I already know I have this clear structure for my job now, no higher expectations. I realize that manager may come with a higher pay, but in many cases, people are saying that trade-off just isn't worth it. And I think that's really interesting because it's such a unique trend from what we've seen over the last, say, 40, 50 years in the workplace, that people are saying no thanks to those leadership positions.
Do you think there's maybe a sense of vulnerability to kind of middle management at the moment? Because we are seeing massive layoffs in the tech sector in particular, which seem to go to middle management sales because there was this boom during COVID, which seems to have been reined back now. Do you think that there is the view that, hey, look, I can improve my basic skills right here, or I can move into a job that could be downsized, or is that much greater risk of being downsized than it was maybe 5 years ago?
Well, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about artificial intelligence too. I think that's the biggest thing on people's mind is how it is artificial intelligence going to impact these kind of downsizing kinds of things. But I think more broadly, we that you're absolutely right that is the place where we are seeing companies cut, right? We're going to cut in that middle manager section. We might cut in some of our sales department section as well. In part because that's the fastest way to get to just the bare minimum operating team that can make things happen. But again, it's at this risk of alienating the staff, alienating those middle managers, creating a situation where people don't want to become middle managers because they see that. They watch that happen. They go, oh, middle managers get fired, middle managers get laid off. I'm just going to stay in my role, develop my own skills. And if they lay me off, I can just go find another job somewhere else and I'll be fine. Whereas those middle managers, I think, are having a much more difficult time relaying those experiences into a new job because those management jobs aren't as available.
Just to have a look at AI then, there was a recent story, a recent survey published in Harvard Business Review, which found that when employees were given access to AI tools, they ended up doing an awful lot more work, partly, to explore what the tools can do, but partly doing things that are slightly off book, but still very beneficial to companies. Is this something you're seeing in your own experience as well?
Yeah, so there's some mixed results. I know McKinsey, for example, published a very early piece of work suggesting that it was increasing. They actually did an experiment with their employees where they gave some AI and they gave some not AI, and they showed increases in productivity internally for those who had access to these AI tools. But to your point, certainly there have also been lots of cases of people over-relying on AI tools, which means that so far, what we've seen, the best way to use these AI tools is to have this human who is sort of reviewing. And so we end up spending a lot of our time reviewing AI output rather than doing sort of constructing it ourselves, or even not even that much time generating the AI output. Obviously, some skill at prompting an AI is useful. But once you've prompted something together, I mean, you get a draft, you get these kinds of outputs that you're looking for. Those have come instantly. You don't really spend much time actually working with the AI. You spend a lot of time reviewing what the AI has produced, refining what the AI has produced, and perhaps generating a final product from that. Is that the world that we're headed to down the road? I'm not exactly sure. It does seem like that this, at least for the next, say, year or so, will be the way that more and more organizations work, particularly as Microsoft has incorporated these kind of AI functionalities into their tools, and most organizations run on Microsoft tools. I actually don't know, to be honest, if Google has incorporated Gemini into things like Google Sheets and whatever their version of Word is. But I mean, as more and more of these things get integrated, I think that's when we're going to see changing in our roles, right? So what do we want the humans to actually do? And I referenced McKinsey earlier. We also see they have changed their interview structure now for potential consultants, that you are now given an AI to work with as part of your case study interview. And part of the evaluation for you on that interview is, how do you use the AI? Do you prompt it in a way that's efficient? Do you review the content? Can you think critically about the output that you receive from it and use that to produce a final product? And I think I think McKinsey says this is the direction things are headed, at least for the near future.
Lastly, the obvious question we tend to ask people is, where do we see things going in the future? But I kind of like to see what elements of the present are going to be still around with us in 10 years' time. So what elements of good leadership do you find are immutable?
Yeah. Well, this is a great question because you can sell a lot of books and you can do a lot of TED-like talks around the world if you say that everything is changing, that you have the people in the audience, the people reading the book, have the power to make a difference. Listen to me for answers. And if you do that, if you say whatever's happening right now is about to change, we're about to see some dramatic change, or it's changing right now, this sells really well. The reality is, I don't think the characteristics of effective leadership have changed in thousands of years. I travel all over the world and meet humans and work with organizations everywhere we go. And over the many, many years that I've worked in this industry, and the many years, many different locations I've worked, what we consistently see is the same core qualities that we look for in our leaders. And quite frankly, I think you can read Plato's Republic and learn a whole lot about leadership there. So it's very popular. I would make a lot more money if I said, hey, listen to me, I can tell you everything is changing about leadership, but I just don't think it's true. I think the reality is that we want leaders who have moral character and integrity. We want leaders who understand the business that they're working in, have competence to make appropriate decisions, who have good judgment, who can revise their judgment when they've made a mistake and could go, oops, we shouldn't do that. We need to change directions now. They want leaders who can provide a vision for the future, who can tell us where this thing is headed, what's the big picture, what's our overall strategy. They want leaders who provide structure on a daily basis so we know what to expect in the workforce. And they want leaders who care about them, show that we really care about our employees. And that really hasn't changed in thousands of years. So while it's very popular to say that these things are changing rapidly or changing with new technology or new times, and new technology is important. I don't think you can lead effectively today if you don't understand how AI is being used or affects your business. But that doesn't mean that the core qualities of effective leadership have changed.
And that was Dr. Ryne Sherman from Hogan Assessments chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some more stories that we have online for you, including...
Yeah, we have an Irish company working on a new way to automate spacecraft. Perplexity gets out of the ad biz, and Energia gets a new owner.
Those stories and more online for you right now at techcentral.ie. We're back again next week with a brand new show for you. Do remember in the meantime to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcasts. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.